Ah, Shrove Tuesday in old London town. A day for pancakes, revelry and, oh yes, massive street riots. Don't let the charming name fool you. This wasn't your average neighbourhood squabble. Imagine a city teeming with apprentices itching for a good brawl, fueled by ale and a healthy disrespect for authority. Traditionally, Shrove Tuesday was their annual pressure valve, a chance to let off steam before the sombre season of Lent, a time for joyous mayhem, you might say. But in 1668, things took a turn for the truly bizarre. Enter our leading man, the merry monarch himself, King Charles II. Now, Charles was no stranger to a good time, yet he'd developed a rather unmerry habit of clamping down on religious gatherings he deemed unsavoury, known as conventicles. His weapon of choice? The Conventicle Act. This delightful piece of legislation outlawed any religious assembly that dared to disagree with the good old Church of England. Naturally, this didn't sit well with London's dissenting population. And when have things ever gone well, when you suppress people's right to worship, or party for that matter? Thankfully, we have a front row seat to the unfolding chaos thanks to one Samuel Pepys. This remarkable man, a naval administrator and Member of Parliament, had a penchant for chronicling the minutiae of his daily life. His diaries, spanning nearly a decade, offer an unparalleled glimpse into the social, political and personal upheavals of 17th century England. Imagine a 17th century Twitter feed penned by a man who couldn't resist a juicy scandal. Pepys's entries are filled with observations on everything from the Great Plague and the Great Fire of London to his own extramarital dalliances and the latest court gossip. His writing is candid, often humorous and always insightful. Pepys, bless his gossipy soul, documented the events of Shrove Tuesday 1668 with the kind of detail that would make a reality TV producer blush. On that day, London was a powder keg of tension and unrest. Pepys's diary entries provide a blow-by-blow account of the chaos that erupted in the streets. His diary entries paint a vivid picture of the mayhem. He describes the apprentices, young men bound by contract to learn a trade, as they took to the streets in protest. These apprentices, often frustrated by their harsh working conditions and lack of freedom, saw Shrove Tuesday as an opportunity to vent their grievances. Apprentices rampaging through the streets, clashing with authorities, and generally making a right royal nuisance of themselves. They smashed windows, looted shops, and engaged in violent confrontations with the city watch. The air was thick with the sounds of shouting, breaking glass, and the clatter of weapons. All in the name of religious freedom, of course. The apprentices claimed they were fighting against the restrictions imposed by the church and the government. They demanded the right to celebrate Shrove Tuesday with the traditional festivities, which included feasting, drinking, and merrymaking, or perhaps just a good excuse for a brawl. Pepys himself was sceptical of their motives, noting that many of the rioters seemed more interested in causing trouble than in any genuine religious or political cause. He observed with a mix of amusement and concern, as the situation spiraled out of control, who can say for sure? Pepys's diaries leave us with a rich, albeit sometimes ambiguous, record of the past. Through his eyes, we see the complexities and contradictions of human nature, the interplay of personal and public life, and the enduring struggle for freedom and justice. His writings remind us that history is not just a series of dates and events, but a tapestry of stories, each thread woven by individuals like Samuel Pepys. Section 4. Justice served, cold and hard. In the annals of history, justice has often been served in ways that are as cold as they are hard. This chapter delves into one such instance, where the scales of justice tipped heavily against those who dared to defy the crown. As you can imagine, Charles II wasn't best pleased with this display of festive disobedience. The king, known for his love of order and decorum, found the unruly behaviour of his subjects particularly irksome. His displeasure was palpable, a storm brewing behind his regal eyes. Riot Act? More like Riot React. The streets were a cacophony of chaos, with people shouting, pushing and defying the very essence of royal authority. The Riot Act, intended to quell such disturbances, seemed almost laughable in the face of such fervent disobedience. The ringleaders were rounded up faster than you could say pancake batter. Soldiers, acting with swift precision, descended upon the crowd, their presence a stark reminder of the consequences of defiance. The ringleaders, those who had dared to incite the masses, were captured with an efficiency that left no room for escape. And the punishment? Well, let's just say they wouldn't be enjoying any Shrove Tuesday shenanigans for quite some time. Some were hanged. The gallows, a grim symbol of justice, stood tall against the sky, a reminder of the ultimate price of rebellion. The executions were public, a spectacle meant to instill fear and obedience in the hearts of the onlookers. Others were transported to the colonies. These unfortunate souls found themselves on ships bound for distant lands, their fate sealed by the decree of the Crown. The journey was long and arduous, a one-way ticket to a life of hard labour and uncertainty. A rather drastic way to deal with a few rowdy apprentices, one might argue. The severity of the punishment sparked debates among the populace, with some questioning the harshness of the king's response. Was it truly necessary to go to such lengths to maintain order? Or was this an overreach of royal power? But hey, who are we to question the wisdom of a monarch who clearly had his hands full, presumably with a goblet of wine and a plate of those aforementioned pancakes? King Charles II, in his opulent palace, continued to enjoy the finer things in life, seemingly unbothered by the turmoil outside his walls. His actions, though severe, were seen as necessary to uphold the sanctity of his reign and the stability of his kingdom. The trials that followed were swift and decisive. Judges appointed by the Crown handed down sentences with an air of finality. The courtroom, a place where justice was meant to be blind, seemed instead to be a stage for the king's will. Royal decrees and legal documents were drafted to ensure that such disobedience would not be tolerated in the future. The laws were clear, the punishments severe, and the message unmistakable. Defy the Crown and face the consequences. In the town squares and marketplaces, whispers of the king's justice spread like wildfire. People spoke in hushed tones, recounting the fates of those who had dared to challenge the authority of the Crown. The fear was palpable, a silent reminder of the power that the monarchy wielded. And so Charles II's displeasure was not just a fleeting emotion, but a force that shaped the lives of many. His reign, marked by moments of both grandeur and severity, left an indelible mark on the history of justice. Justice served, cold and hard. A chapter in history that reminds us of the delicate balance between order and freedom, and the heavy hand that sometimes tips the scales. Section 5, the Poor-Whores Speak Out, a petition for the ages. Now, amidst all this chaos, emerged a document so utterly bizarre, so wonderfully audacious that it deserves its own chapter in this saga. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Poor-Whores Petition. This masterpiece of passive-aggressive protest purported to be from the, shall we say, working women of London. In a nutshell, they complained that the crackdown on conventicles had driven away their best customers. Who knew piety and prostitution were so closely intertwined? Section 6, Irony and Absurdity, a comedic concoction. In the annals of history, few things are as delightfully perplexing as the blend of irony and absurdity that characterized certain events of the 17th century. The whole affair is a delicious stew of irony, simmering with layers of contradictions and unexpected twists. Imagine a pot where every ingredient adds a new flavor of humor and satire. Take, for instance, King Charles II, a monarch known for his love of pleasure and revelry. Picture him, a king who enjoyed his pleasures, now attempting to curb the fun of the masses. It's a scene ripe with irony, as the very essence of his rule was indulgence, yet he sought to impose restrictions on the common folk. Then there were the Apprentices, young men in their prime, rioting in the name of religious freedom. These were not just any riots, they were chaotic displays of fervour, where the line between righteous protest and sheer hooliganism blurred. They championed the cause of liberty while simultaneously terrorising innocent bystanders, creating a paradox that was as dangerous as it was absurd. And of course, the Poor-Whores Petition, a document so outlandish, so cheekily subversive, that one can't help but chuckle at its sheer audacity. This petition, penned with a mix of desperation and wit, demanded rights and recognition for a marginalized group in a manner that was both serious and satirical. It's almost too perfect, wouldn't you say? The juxtaposition of earnest demands with a tone of irreverence created a narrative that was both poignant and humorous. It was a masterstroke of comedic timing, where the gravity of the situation was lightened by the clever use of humor. A historical farce of the highest order, served with a side of social commentary and a generous dollop of good old-fashioned British absurdity. These events, when viewed through the lens of time, reveal a tapestry woven with threads of irony, humor, and a touch of the ridiculous. They remind us that history is not just a series of dates and events, but a rich narrative filled with human folly and wit. Section 7. London's legacy, a city steeped in mayhem and merriment. So there you have it, the Shrove Tuesday riots of 1668, a tale of rebellion, religion and riotous behaviour. It's a story as chaotic and colourful as the city itself. London, my friends, has always been a place of contradictions, a melting pot of cultures, classes and characters, all jostling for space and a slice of the pie. And sometimes, just sometimes, that jostling spills over into the streets, creating a right royal rumble that echoes through the centuries.